Alright, now today we're going to be doing starter wiring. Had some mishaps here at work, so basically I've already made up a new cable, but I am going to give you some information and part numbers and stuff so you can actually get these terminals. That, as you can see, the beauty of these is you do not have to take them off every time that you do anything. The only time those have to come off is whenever you're changing batteries, because you can unbolt this side and be good to go. Now, obviously, you're going to have some pretty bulky wire. My 4-gauge wire that I'm using just from the battery to the starter solenoid was $1.75 a foot. The 2-gauge or so that I'm going to use from the starter solenoid over to my starter is, I think it was roughly $3.50 a foot. Good thing is, I only have to have, say, 5 feet or 6 of it, so it's not going to be too terrible. In the end, it's going to cost me about $100 to get all my wiring upgraded. And the reason being is this is unacceptable. Like, this ground has only got 4 strands, 5, 6 maybe. This terminal is, well, you can see that's it all the way squished tight. Those are junk. Those are a make do, if you, at best, make do until you get home. And plus the ground slipped out of the little cable there, the little, right there you go, you can see it, the little ring terminal, so that has to be fixed. And plus, on this side, you can see that it's starting to get corrosion in the wiring down in there. So I decided at this point, it's just time to screw it. Let's go fix this better. I don't feel like being stranded on the side of the road. So, now comes the parts list. And basically, this is it. I mean, this is just going to be going straight from the battery over to one side. And then once I get the extra wire and more lugs, it'll be going from this side of the starter solenoid down to the starter itself. Now, some notes I want to go with is I've always thought this was one piece. For whatever reason, I never really paid attention to it. I just knew this went on the starter, period. And the way this works is the fat wire goes from the starter solenoid to the battery terminal. The thin wire, this little 8-gauge maybe, I'd say it's closer to 10-gauge actually, 8 to 10 gauge, it actually goes down to the starter, and that's what actually turns the starter on, which I consider bullcrap. If anything, it should have been the other way around. But what do I know? I'm not an engineer. But anyways, what we're doing today is I'm replacing the fat cable on this side here because it pulled out of the terminal that I was forced to put on here. So, got a new fresh cable made up, not a big deal. This one, I split it so you could see, plus so I could actually use one piece instead of having to use 2. But I want to trim this up and stuff for the time being. But yeah, this is the wire that goes from the other side down to the starter. Now, for all of you that looks at this and you're like, holy shit, that's a lot of mess. The battery setups on these trucks are stupid simple. And if you bear with me here, I'll go through it really quickly so that if you break down or whatever, you don't have this issue of, crap, that's a lot of stuff. So, all right, let's go through this. You have, obviously, power wires coming from there over, because that's where your computer and stuff is over there. And you have your alternator. Now, on the 2Gs, you got 2 plugs. You got one that is the actual power wires, and this one is the wire and pigtail that actually goes for the voltage regulator, which you can see right here. Now, if you are really cautious, just a tidbit of information, if you take like a steel screwdriver while the engine is running, now obviously don't put your fingers where you can't see or you know they're going to get hurt, but if you can, well, I can see that right there, this little circle piece right here, that is actually the center of the alternator. And if you, while the engine is running, take a steel or even a knife blade, touch it to that, it'll suck it over to it because it's creating magnetism. That's just an easy and quick way to know, hey, is my alternator, I don't know what it's producing, but it's producing something. It's doing some kind of its job. But anyways, you got your power wires. They come over to your battery because it's here's the source of your power. It has to feed the battery, which is basically just a reserve. The voltage regulator, what it does is as it turns, it keeps the voltage steady instead of it going 12 volts, 13, 10, 9. What it does is it stabilizes. It's almost like a capacitor in a way. It just stabilizes the voltage. The battery itself is just a reserve. That way that you can start it. This is what gives you the power to start your vehicle, because otherwise you wouldn't have anything, no power available, because this is only storing just a minimal amount, just enough to smooth out those spikes. And on top of that, it only works when it's on. And to get it on, we got to have the battery. So now you can see my battery is quite a large battery here. 810 code cranking amps and 1000 code cranking amps. Now this is at 32 degrees. It's below that, so from there you can start counting down a tad how long it's going to last and stuff like that. I replaced one of my terminals. I've got the other one in the truck to replace it. This is my stereo wire, so disregard this. And so we've got from power maker, power bank, then it comes through via this fat wire up to the starter solenoid. Now you're going to have two lugs. Now one is over here and it puts power to it. And then when you turn the key, which is this little trigger wire, which is a one wire setup, this little fella right here, it goes on the side of the there that says S on it. If you can see right there, my phone won't. There we go. S. Now this one should say I on it if I'm not mistaken. But this one here, it says S, that's for your starter trigger wire. So basically you've got 12 volts up, trigger turns this, it activates this, well, technically it's a relay, and that puts the 12 volts over to the starter wire that then goes down and over to the starter down on the side of your engine there. And basically from there it activates that relay, which then hits the, well, I've always heard it called a Bendix, but it's actually the part name. But it activates the starter, which is grounded, by the way, and then from there, that's only in the start position. When you turn your key all the way forward and touch that pole, it's in the little switch box. Turn the key all the way on, it's giving 12 volts to this little trigger wire. And when you let off the key and either it starts running or just kicks back with one click to on or run position, then it takes 12 volts away from this, because the only way it gets 12 volts is in the very last position. And then of course you got your grounds. Now the grounds on these trucks goes from the fender to the battery, from the battery on down to the frame rail, and right there you can see it. It's actually got like a little T thing in it that bolts it here, and then it goes on across the other side of the engine. But today I'm just putting power wires in and getting this all sorted back out, because yeah, I forgot and didn't put my hold down on, came to work, and it went hell west and crooked. So far it seems like no leaks or harm to the battery, because this is brand new, less than 3 weeks old. But yeah, that's basically the ins and outs of the battery itself and how it plays a part in with the engine. First part is my ring terminals. Now these are actually 4 gauge. They're a tad big, but I'm making them fit just because it's what I got, because I didn't pay attention. And if you notice on the terminal itself, or the lug as I've always been told to call it, we found it here, right there we go. You can actually see a number 4. They stamp it on there. That's news to me. I didn't know that before, so now you know. If you look on it, it'll tell you what gauge wire. I have 6 gauge, my terminals are 4, but I made it work. It looks fine. So there's that. I will throw a picture up of these terminals. They're actually less than $3 a piece and awesome. Very well constructed. I've got 2 of the other ones in the truck. Very well constructed. You do not have to remove this for any reason other than to change batteries, because all your wiring, which by the way is a little caveat that I didn't like at the first, but I said forget it, we're going to redo this. You have to either cut the ends off and put terminals on, or you have to from there go and just replace all the wiring, which is what I'm doing anyway. It wouldn't be a bad idea on any truck that's 25, 30 years old anyway. So from now on, these are what's going on any vehicle. If I got a 2017 truck right now, that's exactly what I would put on it, just out of sheer ease of use and stuff like that. Now, this is my terminals. I got these at Walmart. You can get them at Advance or O'Reilly's or any parts store. Now, these are the Never Start brand, as I call them. And it just tells you it's got a 3/8 hole and so on and so on. But this is the part number for 4 gauge. You might want to check around, make sure you're getting what you should get, which is, if you got 6 gauge wire, you should have a 6 gauge terminal. I'm fudging a tad because, well, it's my truck. If it was a customer's truck, it'd be a different story. But anyways, that's the ring terminals. Your wire, you can get at any store roughly. It's just huge multi-strand stuff. It looks like this, but prettier. Your terminals, again, I'll post a pic and a link to that on O'Reilly's website, which is actually where I got these from. Both of them were less than $7. So we've got $7 and 2 terminals. These are approximately $3 for 2. So you'll say you need 6 to 8 of them, anywhere from $9 to $12. We'll say 12. $12 here, $7 for 2 terminals, and your $20 gets you hardware. And then you're going to need heat shrink, which I bought. It was like a box of it for like $10, and all different types. And I've had it for ages, so much I had to write heat shrink tubing on it because the paperwork had fell off of it. This came from Advance. It was like $11, but it's got all kinds of different sizes. You'll need that, a lighter, and you're going to need a hammer. You can use a ball peen hammer like I did, which was I turned it and just hit it. But they actually make a tool. It's about $30. That for bigger terminals and stuff, you slide it in there, and it's basically got a punch that just comes down, hits it, and locks it in place. Better setup, but I'm not putting $30 in that tool. Forget that. Now, some of these, if you're really adventurous, be nice to, and I don't have it at hand, I have to fix this before I go home and here at work. But basically, if you've got the solder, let solder fall in there and melt with like a little pencil butane torch or whatever. Let it melt, and while it's molten, stick your wire in. Give it a few taps, or just let it be, because the only thing it has to do is just sit there. I mean, solder's not a hard mechanical connection; it's just an electrical connection. But it will seep down into the fold there and help keep it. But personally, if it was me, put the solder in, run your wire in, and then hit it. It kind of gives it a little squish to hold it and clamp it. Then reheat your solder and let it do its final thing. But from there, again, we've went over the terminals, wiring, ring terminal or / lugs. And basically, that's what you need. Again, you're going to have a hammer, pocket knife or something to cut this back so far. And my methodology for it was just hold it up to like the lug right here, like so. And I just kind of measured, gave myself a little gap so that it would actually slide in, and good to go. Now, all right, now this is what we're doing today, is basically just getting this thing drivable again, which is, this is going on here, which I already got it made up. It'll go from there over to the starter solenoid here. Basically, I'm just going to put this skinny ring terminal back on, because that's the actual starter trigger wire. That's the next wire I will be replacing. Of course, I'll make a video over that. And from there, my job's done today. But yeah, I'll make a video showing how to route these wires, because I noticed that my trigger wire is actually very close to my exhaust. So I'm going to have to get under there very soon. I moved it away just so it would be away from there, but I'm going to use zip ties and just route everything nice and neat with split loom. Make it look nice and neat, more professional looking, and just that way it's out of the way. Alright, now, so far in this process, I've just removed the split loom I had on there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this wire. Oh wait, never mind, I've zip tied the shit out of it. Now, at this point, 9 times out of 10, you guys are either going to reach for one of these bad boys, or you're going to reach for one of these to cut those zip ties off. Don't. Now, I want to caution you, if you do, in case you're a new subscriber, new to the mechanic field, you've never cut wire, or you've never cut any kind of hard substance, number one, hold it firmly and cut away. Otherwise, if you cut it this way and it slips, you could stab yourself. You could cut a finger horribly. Cut away. You can control it a little better and at least get it away from you. Now, with that said, don't be a dumbass and use your knife. Yes, you older folks, I've called you a dumbass. Shots fired. That's what side cutters are for. Normally, you'd have to hold it with 2 hands, cut it, and do whatever. But what's this? All I gotta do is just get a hold of it, grab it, and that's good to go. Now, that wasn't a perfect one right there because I'm doing this completely one-handed, but you can see that my point is, this is a lot safer and predictable. Like right there, just get down on the side of it, snap it. You have to get down on the side, put your wire cutters this side down against it so you're not cutting in or whatever. Snip it, call it a day. It's predictable, it's safe, and that way you don't, come up with sore fingers, cut fingers, whatever. Alright, just went ahead and put it on. Still have to tap my terminal up, but look how much nicer and neater this looks. Nice, smooth. My wire is cut a tad long, and the purpose for that, you'll see later on, is I want to try to wire everything. If nothing, I've even thought about using PVC pipe just to protect the wire, make it look cleaner, and just use it to terminate right there. But I don't know, I'll figure it out. But that's the reason the wire is a fuzz long. Normally it should be 4 or 5 inches took out of it just so it runs over. But I wanted to give myself a little bit of leeway, that way that if I want to move something around I can. I got the room and I don't have to make new wires. Now, something else. My truck has the neutral safety switch jumpered over. I don't recommend it if you're not going to be the primary driver, because if these two crank over, it won't start because it's in the truck's turned off, so it's not going to start. But what this can do is activate the starter and push the truck forward. It's scary the first time it happens, and especially if you're working in this position and you've got a small garage. Well, look what's right there. Your knees right into the bumper, and if there's a garage door or wall right there, you just got pinned in beside the truck and you can't do anything. Now, it might roll back a tad and let you go, but don't take the risk. Just, if you're going to jumper it, don't be a dumbass. But when doing this work, now the best way to do it is just not even plug it up, because it's got power here and it's grounded and all that good stuff. But if you're finishing up like me and you already got it this way and you find yourself in this position, do not cross those two lugs over, this one and this one. It'll transfer power from there to the starter, and the truck will lurch forward. Now, it's not going to like go 10 feet. It'll only move 1.5 feet or so, but still, that's enough. Just letting you guys know the dangers of working on this stuff, because this stuff doesn't feel, it doesn't care. You can be laying here smothered to death because you got pinned. This truck won't care one bit about you. Won't care about your family. Be safe. Keep all your digits, all your limbs, eyes, ears. Protect yourself, guys. I mean, you only get one set. But yeah, whenever you're working on this, be careful. Which you don't need to be cranking way down on these. Just slow and gentle, and that way you don't cross these two over. It gets a little finicky, but generally speaking, you're going to walk out safe, all your attachments left. Just wanted to throw out some safety stuff in there, in the case you do like I did and go ass backwards about it. The smart way would have been to go from the starter solenoid that way over to the battery, but I did it backwards like 99% of the people do. And I'm admitting my guilt of this because it's showing that I'm not smart. I'm not the smartest person in the world. But in the case that you do find yourself in that situation, just please, for the love of God, don't cross these over. Now, in the case of, well, I'm not sure if it would with the neutral safety switch jumper, not jumpered like mine is, but just don't take the risk. You don't know if somebody did do it or didn't do it unless you physically went and checked. And I'd almost lay a $50 bill down that you didn't check. So just don't jumper these. Don't, stick it this way. Everybody knows don't stick a wrench in between unless you just don't care for a wrench and you want a bomb. But yeah, simple as that. And you got new wires, terminals. It should start a little fresher. All right, one last thing. Didn't pay attention to what I had on hand and what I didn't. I only need 2 more terminals or lugs and my 4-gauge wire, and I'll show you why. As you can see, I went ahead and put my other terminal on. I had the wire, and I thought I didn't have enough lugs, but it turned out I did. So this ain't going to be permanent. I just didn't have enough lugs to finish it, and this was an old one. I just made a clamp style, because all it is a ground. But it goes from there. I gave myself some extra room, and I might end up trimming this down a tad. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But anyways, it runs up to the terminal, grounds here from the body, terminal, goes down, and that bolt right there at the tip of my finger, where you see the new wire going in, that's actually the ground for the starter. So all I have to do is just undo that bolt, put my new lug wire and a new lug on my starter, and my starter has a nice fat ground on it. It's got one now, but I've had this truck almost 10 years in salty conditions and stuff, so I'm just going to go ahead and replace that. Next up, I'm going to be replacing the starter wire. This right here, I'm not joking, guys, I can't make this shit up. This is from Ford. As you can see where I cut this down, this is the wire that triggers your starter. It should be at least as thick as my 6-gauge stuff here, and this is here 10, 12 gauge maybe. So this will be replaced soon. I don't have enough lugs, and I'll replace this. This is my compressor wire. I'm actually going to replace that with a big fat wire too. Probably 6-gauge if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I got probably about another $50 in wires to do, but everything's nice, snugged up. Trigger wire's on, so it should start up and be fine now. But yeah, you can see how it looks a lot cleaner. And the terminal on this side, the reason this one's stuck up a tad is I need to file it down a tad, because the terminal on this side is bigger than this side. This one I had to clamp down quite a bit, but it's nice and solid now. Everything's solid connections, new connections. So it should start a little quicker, a little stronger. Because the only thing old now is just the trigger wire for the starter and that ground that goes from the frame to the starter. Just a tidbit of information. If you'll notice, this actually switched. I had the big wire over here, and it doesn't work. Just a heads up, if you put this together like I did, and this does not start your truck, switch the 2 wires. You got to have your trigger wire to present the 12 volts here, but the 12 volts has to be on the correct side for this to all work. Put 12 volts across from there on back to the starter and back into the truck. So on mine, this is the trigger labeled S on the solenoid, and the little wire would be to the right of it if you're looking straight at it, such as this. Let me actually get it right here. So little wire to the right, big wire to the left, and the same position that your alternator wiring and stuff went to. And yeah, I still have some stuff to work on. This wire will be upgraded to like a 2 or 0 gauge, and this wire will be also upgraded to 6 gauge, just cash flow, stuff like that at the moment. But yeah, if you split these wires and then you can't get your truck to start, like you turn the key and there's no lights on at all, just switch them. You've just got the 12 volts on the wrong side, and that's it.